Here are the 5 biggest takeaways I learned from analyzing over 23,841 losing options trades. If you don't know who I am, my name is Austin Booley, and I am the founder of the Options Auto Trader, which is an options automation tool that handles over $1 million of trading volume every single day. And I pulled data from over 23,000 losing trades, and I asked AI to analyze what the 5 biggest takeaways are, and I'm going to walk you through them and explain why. Number one is high credit doesn't always mean high safety. And we've talked about this a lot, is just because you're receiving a high premium, a high credit on a trade, doesn't mean that it's a great trade. It does mean the potential for more profit, but at the same exact time, it means more potential for loss. Okay, so the higher credit you receive is a direct proportion to how much money you can make, but also how much you stand to lose. A 200% stop loss with a $40 credit is a lot different than a 200% stop loss on a $20 credit. So make sure that you understand that high premium doesn't always mean lower risk. In fact, it actually means higher risk. So that's takeaway number one. Takeaway number two is longer DTE equals bigger tail exposure. So if you know anything about me, I am a fan of going between 90 to 120 DTEs out in the future. This means when I sell or trade an option, I'm going 3 to 4 months out. Why? This gives me more time in the trade to be right in case something happens in the market, lowers my volatility risk, and allows me to collect more credit, which, as we just talked about, is not the entire goal. That's why I talked about the 2 things that help with risk when you do this. But to understand that the further out in time you go, it does mean you have a larger tail risk. It means that you need to keep your buying power and your allocation per individual trade at a manageable level, under 5% or even less, around 1% if you can. Why? Because the tail risk on longer trades can be larger, meaning if the market drops hard, your losses on a trade like this is going to be quite larger. Why? Well, as we just talked about it, premium is higher. And so in order to help us control that risk better, we need to make sure that we're trading with a proper account allocation per every single trade. Number 3 is 28 to 30 DTE strategies are also risky, even though they fall in the theta decay sweet spot. So in another video, and specifically in Tasty Trade, they talk about how 45 DTE is a great level, and it is. But you have a lot of volatility and risk exposure at that point compared to something like a 90 to 120 days out. What I mean by that is if you look at a 45 DTE option at 10 delta versus a 90 DTE, same delta level, the Vega, the volatility market risk is going to be in half, literally 50% of what that is. And so if you're trying to cut risk down, you want to make sure you go further out in time. So if you are going to 45 days, maybe around 28 days, still understand that the closer in you go, you are making profit faster, but your risk is higher. Number 4 is most catastrophic losses came from strangle. I actually find this very fascinating, and is actually aligned with what I've been telling a lot of my coaching clients, which is this, is that if you have under $100,000, you shouldn't be doing strangles. And the truth is why? Because the market trends in different directions, and strangles plays off a neutral market, means that we're betting it's going to stay below a certain level, and we're betting it's going to stay above a certain level. It stays within this level, we make money. But more times than not, the market is trending in a certain direction, either up or down, and it tends to break these zones, which leads to losses for us. And so if you're using strangles, particularly long DTE strangles, you have the potential to have a lot of losses. Instead, you want to trade with the market trend, and you want to make sure that, hey, if the market's trending up, I'm just going to use a bullish strategy like short puts. I'm just going to make money on the way up. I'm not going to restrict my upside. Same thing to the downside. If the market's trending down, I'm not going to profit on something that's trying to stay above a level. I want to make money on the way down fully. And so a strangle caps it by giving you these 2 upside levels or downside upside levels that could potentially break. And so I found that strangles have the propensity to lose more because of that. Next, 5. Many huge losses were preventable with stops and defined risk. I don't know how many times I've said this, but when it comes to options trading, there's a lot of risks that we just don't understand that happen to us every day. One of that is market makers hunting our stop losses. So if you have a market maker, they can see your order and they can adjust the market to exit prematurely so that you end up with a loss and they turn around and take that trade for a profit. So market makers. And so for that reason, is why a lot of people don't use stop losses, but yet stop losses could have prevented a lot of the biggest losses that it saw when analyzing 23,000 of these losses. And so a stop loss is amazing because it can cut that risk down. But at the same time, unless you're using an automation system like the Options Auto Trader, you won't be able to fully implement stop losses because market makers will see that order and trigger it early. But if you're using a tool like the Options Auto Trader, it hides your order from the market maker. That way you actually have a stop loss that nobody can see and manipulate the market to execute, so that'll actually protect your downside and give you the ability to have a real stop loss. Anyways, if you're interested in the Options Auto Trader and avoiding market makers and automating your trading, click on the description down below. I hope you enjoyed this and found a takeaway from the 5 takeaways of 23,000 losing trades. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video and I'll see you in the next one.